So this whole China spy balloon story has really been dominating the news lately. So here we have a story about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is obviously the QAnon representative in the House. She's very controversial, of course. There was a House briefing, a secret House briefing, a classified House briefing on the China spy balloon, and it looks like it kind of exploded with Greene comments, "I chewed them out." So it says a classified briefing for House lawmakers on the Chinese spy balloon turned tense on Thursday when Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene went after administration officials for waiting days before shooting down the surveillance device. Quote, "I had to wait in line the whole time. I was, I think, the second to last person, and I chewed them out just like the American people would have," Greene told The Hill. "I tore them to pieces." Biden administration officials briefed House members behind closed doors in the Capitol Thursday morning on the weekend's downing of a Chinese spy balloon off the Carolina coast, which capped off a days-long saga following the balloon as it floated over the U.S. One lawmaker who attended the briefing said the exchange between Greene and the officials included profanities. When she got to ask questions, the lawmaker recalled, she was yelling out saying, "Bullshit," and "I don't believe you." Just screaming and yelling, irrational in my estimation, the lawmaker added. Republicans have criticized the administration's decision to wait to shoot down the balloon until it was over water, which allowed the device to travel through several states across the country. President Biden said he ordered the U.S. military to shoot down the balloon, quote, "as soon as possible," and his national security officials determined that the best time to do that was when it got over water. So I guess the thing that they're trying to say is we wanted to have it come over water so we could down it and then take it to do our own investigation of the balloon to kind of figure out what was going on. Obviously, U.S.-China tensions are just exploding right now to a really scary and alarming rate. And I have some more analysis on this that I'm going to get into, so definitely stick around for that. But what you can see here is I think China's trying to bitch Biden, I think. There's this weird sentiment that I think older people have. Younger people, I don't think have this kind of sentiment. I think it's an old geezer thing where it's this idea of your strength as a country is determined by these weird symbolic bullshits. I've heard from people Obama was weak because at the G20 event, China didn't put out the red rug for him and they snuffed him and stuff like that, as if that's something serious or something that matters or something that is of value, as opposed to oh no, our trade policy is like this, so we brought a bunch of jobs back home that's going to hurt them. It's going to hurt them in trade, and we're going to be above. Instead of that, it's oh, they didn't put the red carpet out for Obama. It's dude, who gives a fuck? Who cares? This is so stupid. And so to me, this is a very similar event where it's a dumb balloon that's going over. Who cares? And there's not really anything serious of this. It's more just optics kind of thing. She says, quote, "I said, the president may be a Democrat, but he's still the president of the United States, and they made him look like a fool and made him look weak the week before the State of the Union. Said that publicly, too, by not shooting it down, and I said there was nothing I heard there today that gave me any confidence in what they did. They tried to give me some more excuses, and I said, I don't want to hear more of your excuses. He said, well, it's a matter of opinion. I said, no, you're nothing but excuses, and it's wrong, and I'm just telling you this how the American people see it, and it's a serious problem." So again, this is also a really big, if you read Federalist 10 by James Madison, right? He explains how the danger of in his estimation of a direct democracy would be having too much of just basically untempered people who are just very brash and kind of brazen and not moderating and not temperament, not having good temperament. And so you get these very factious people that you can see here where she's this representative of this district and she's just going so hard on whatever she views as the American people. She's obviously projecting here. She has no evidence that this is how American people see it. She's kind of just going based off whatever is going to be beneficial for what she views it in her district. And so this is the problem with first past to post voting. We need to get rid of it. We need to bring proportional representation into the United States. So you have a national election that gets to determine, what percentage of seats third parties get. And that would really be helpful to third parties too. And I'm not even super big on third parties, but that would be huge if you had a national ballot saying, hey, which party do you vote for? And then whatever percentage the party gets, that's how many seats they get. As opposed to, let's have a district race where the person who gets the most votes, which is called first past the post voting, wins. Because you get crazy people like this who are just they're just so hardcore and just fighting for whatever they believe their district is. And I don't think we really benefit from that as a country. Gregory Meeks, top Democrat in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said there was tension in the room. Some members who just don't want to believe what they said. They says, "Oh, I don't believe you. That kind of thing. I don't trust you." He said. So that's the kind of tension, just to fight back. Another lawmaker said there were people muttering on the side. A bunch of people basically saying this stuff. There's a bunch of other stuff. Some of them people saying that it was, it was helpful. Others saying that it wasn't. You know what I mean? So she says, one doesn't sound so nice, but it sounded like bullshit. The other one is it was a bunch of excuses. They allowed her to go across country and there was nothing they told us and they gave good reason. I think they made the right move. As a matter of fact, they made the wrong move. So none of this really matters. This is all just a political ploy by Marjorie Greene. There was nothing that Biden or the administration could have briefed her on to convince her that this was the right move. There just wasn't. But when it comes to this more Chinese, U.S. relations situation, what we need to do is we need to temper relations. But we, at the same time, need to combat China's growing influence in the world because they're a big danger to the world in terms of being anti-democracy. There's zero democracy in China. They ban basically everything. You can't access Wikipedia, YouTube, etc. You can't say anything against the CCP. It's very, very dangerous. Seeing that they've, put millions of Muslim Uyghurs into concentration camps, which is like everyone likes to shit on America, obviously, right? And it's fine to criticize them, but I think we lose a lot of perspective on it sometimes when we get too far into that and we take for granted the rights we have here. Say something really horrible about Joe Biden and then go to China and say something really horrible about Xi Jinping and tell me what happens, or the CCP, like tell me what happens, tell me how it goes. It's night and day and it's not even close. But the point here is you can do, I believe in the Teddy Roosevelt strategy here, where it's like, kind of speak softly but carry a big stick kind of thing. I think that, the stuff that he's saying about Taiwan, where he's like, oh, we're going to militarily defend Taiwan, I think it's just unnecessary. I don't really find Taiwan to be much of a big deal anyways, honestly. And it just seems like something that's just so going to raise tensions. And we need to cool tensions. We need to bring them down. However, now, if you're coming at it from the perspective of, right, I would say leftists are pro-China, mostly because they're anti-America. China's not even communist. It's not. It's a kind of country, right? Communist in name only. It's not actually communist. So it's only communist in name, so you can't support it on grounds it's communist unless you're trying to lie about it. It's really more so they're just the anti to America, right? And so there's that, but you have this situation where if you're somebody who's anti-China, which is what the Republicans are supposed to be, Joe Biden is way more anti-China than Trump was. And honestly, Trump's like dumb, like trade wars and stuff where he put tariffs on it. That doesn't help anything. It doesn't do anything. The tariffs that he was placing, it just made stuff more expensive for Americans. That's all it did. And then what you have here is actually Biden is actually doing good stuff with like the CHIPS Act, for example, where he's bringing back infrastructure here so we have jobs and these kinds of things here. Now, I'm pro-free trade, but there are some good, criticisms, I would say, of it, like national security and things of that nature. So, like, for example, like this, if you get too dependent upon a China, for example, or you're too dependent upon like these like Middle Eastern dictators for oil, for example. But like the Trans-Pacific Partnership was another good thing that was going to be able to create like this kind of network of free trade that would be able to fight Chinese dominance and influence. So that would have been another good thing, but that obviously ended up getting quashed. And so Biden has been way more anti-China than Trump ever was. All Trump did was just blah, blah, blah. That's all Trump ever did was just talk, 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 right? Biden is actually taking action with CHIPS Act and things like strategic initiative, something. There's a bunch of stuff that he's done statutorily that has just brought back infrastructure here to build things in America. And we need that to an extent for sure. We want to prioritize free trade as much as possible while also making sure we retain as many jobs as possible, as well as having infrastructure in case of supply chain issues and things of that nature are very important as well. So just, don't make all of this blabber, like, when you're talking, just be nice and be chill. And then when you're actually making moves, like make those kinds of moves. So pass the CHIPS Act, because the CHIPS Act is way more than any other blabber, dumb tariffs that Trump puts on or whatever. Investments in your home infrastructure is going to be, better than just putting tariffs on, imported goods from China, right? So do that, pass the CHIPS Act, but don't come out and say we're going to militarily defend China. And this doesn't mean anything. The dumb balloon, I think there's a stark divide that's happening where this is something I've noticed personally. This kind of dumb symbolic thing is somehow given value in some way, like, oh, the balloon being over, and oh, America looks weak if it doesn't shoot down the balloon. It's just this dumb, weird, like dick China, like weird, like, I don't even know, like ego kind of complex kind of thing. Like, who cares, dude? And again, like I've heard that with the Obama thing, oh, China didn't put out the red carpet. Dude, none of that shit matters. That's not virtuous. It's not helpful. It doesn't mean anything. Passing the CHIPS Act, for example, is a great example of something that actually matters, that actually impacts this. But it's politics. Politics is a dirty game. This is why we have a representative democracy in the United States, actually, although I don't know how much that actually helps the situation of taming this kind of lack of temperament amongst peoples. Although we'd be much better off with proportional representation than we would with this first past the post garbage that we have now. And so, it was always like the loudest one in the room is like always the weakest, you know what I mean? Like if you got a big dick, like you don't need to say it, you know what I'm saying? Like if someone's saying they have a big dick, they probably don't. So it's like, you know what I mean? So just be sort of strong in terms of passing the CHIPS Act, but don't come out there and be so openly hostile. That's what I think that the policy needs to be, because it's dangerous. The tempers are getting dangerously high. We want to cool them. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we're combating Chinese hegemony and, monopoly in that area and trade, and how much they've already expanded into Africa and other areas. They own like half the world at this point, you know what I mean? So although they're super reliant, they rely more on the West than the West relies on China, because China's an export economy, and if you don't have an importer to take your exports, you're worthless, right? So they actually rely more on them. And so I know that they complied a lot with the Iranian sanctions, and I'm not sure how much they're complying with the Russian ones.